Evelyn Hart sat alone in the corner booth of Miller's Coffee House, watching the clock tick past 8:30. The man she was supposed to meet hadn't shown. Christmas lights reflected off her untouched hot chocolate, now cold. She reached for her coat, ready to leave this embarrassment behind. The door opened. Wind rushed in, bells chiming softly. Two little girls stepped inside, cheeks flushed pink from the cold. They wore matching red coats and looked around nervously. One of them spotted Evelyn and tugged her sister's sleeve. They walked over, small boots squeaking on the wooden floor. The first girl swallowed hard and whispered, "My daddy's sorry, he's late." The cafe fell silent. Evelyn stared, frozen. A date she thought was meaningless had just begun with an apology from two children. Evelyn hadn't wanted to come tonight. Her best friend, Rachel, had insisted, practically forcing her into this blind date setup. "It's your last chance before Christmas," Rachel had said over the phone 3 days ago. "You can't spend another year alone with just your cat." The words had stung because they were true. Evelyn lived in a small one-bedroom apartment downtown, surrounded by half-finished design projects and sketches she'd never show anyone. She was 30 years old and worked as a freelance graphic designer, a job that kept her safely isolated from people. She took on projects through email, delivered files digitally, and rarely met clients face-to-face. 3 years ago, her fiancé Marcus had left her 2 weeks before their wedding. They'd been together since college. She'd already sent out invitations, chosen flowers, picked a venue. Then, one Tuesday morning, he'd texted her while she was at work. Not called. Texted, "I met someone else. I'm sorry, I can't do this." 8 years together ended in 23 words. Evelyn had spent the next 6 months in a fog of humiliation and grief. Friends tried to comfort her, but their pity only made it worse. Eventually, she stopped answering calls, stopped going out, stopped believing that love was anything more than a setup for pain. Since then, Evelyn had built walls so high that even close friends struggled to reach her. Her apartment became her fortress. Her tabby cat Winston became her only companion. Every morning she woke up at 7, made coffee, worked until dark, microwaved dinner, and went to bed wondering if this was all her life would ever be. She told herself she was fine, that she preferred the solitude. But late at night, when the apartment was too quiet and Winston was asleep, she felt the hollow ache of loneliness settle deep in her chest. Rachel had set up this blind date through a friend of a friend who knew someone from church. "A single guy," she'd said, "works with his hands. Quiet type. Could use some company during the holidays." Evelyn had agreed only to stop Rachel's relentless nagging. She'd dressed in a simple gray sweater and jeans, applied minimal makeup, and told herself she'd stay for 20 minutes before making an excuse to leave. But now, sitting in Miller's Coffee House with Christmas decorations twinkling around her and soft carols playing through the speakers, she felt the familiar ache of disappointment settling in. Another man who couldn't even bother to show up on time. Another reminder that she wasn't worth the effort. Meanwhile, across town, Liam Walker was in the middle of a crisis. His truck had broken down on Route 9, and he'd spent the last 40 minutes trying to flag down help in the freezing December wind. The temperature had dropped to 20 degrees, and snow was starting to fall harder. His phone had died an hour ago, right after he'd dropped the girls off at his neighbor's house. He'd tried the ignition 5 times. Nothing. Just a clicking sound and the smell of burnt oil. Liam was 35 years old, a mechanical engineer who worked at Henderson Aviation Repair on the edge of town. He could fix a plane engine blindfolded, but his own truck had betrayed him at the worst possible moment. Before this job, he'd been a captain in the United States Air Force, flying C-130 cargo planes across conflict zones in the Middle East. He'd loved it. The precision, the adrenaline, the sense of purpose. But that life ended 3 years ago when his wife Sarah died in a car accident. She'd been driving home from her sister's house in Ohio when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit her head-on. Sarah died instantly. Liam had been deployed in Afghanistan when he got the call from his sister-in-law. He'd flown home on emergency leave to find his 2 6-year-old daughters devastated and confused, asking when Mommy was coming back. He couldn't answer them. He could barely breathe. The Air Force had offered him grief counseling and extended leave, but Liam knew he couldn't go back. He couldn't deploy again, couldn't leave Emma and Ellie for months at a time. So he'd resigned his commission, packed up their house in Virginia, and moved to this small Pennsylvania town where Sarah's sister lived. He took the first job he could find at the aviation repair shop, bought a modest house on Maple Street, and tried desperately to be both mother and father to his girls. Raising Emma and Ellie alone was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Harder than combat missions. Harder than losing Sarah. He braided their hair every morning. Though it never looked quite right, he packed their lunches with notes he hoped would make them smile. He read them bedtime stories, helped with homework, and attended every school event, but he also saw the sadness in their eyes when other kids talked about their moms. He heard Ellie crying in her room sometimes, whispering to a photo of Sarah. He watched Emma grow quieter, more withdrawn, and he had no idea how to fix it. Tonight's blind date had been Emma and Ellie's idea, in a strange way. His coworker's wife, Linda, had suggested it during a holiday party last week. The girls had overheard. They'd begged him to go. "Please, Daddy," Emma had said, her brown eyes wide. "We just want to see you smile again." Liam hadn't smiled in 3 years. Not really. So he'd agreed, even though the thought of dating felt like betraying Sarah's memory. He'd showered, shaved, put on his best flannel shirt, and told the girls he'd be home by 9. Then his truck had died. A passing driver finally stopped, an elderly man in a pickup who offered Liam a ride into town. Liam thanked him profusely and climbed in, his heart pounding. By the time they reached Miller's coffee house, it was 8:40. He burst through the door, covered in snow, breathing hard. His flannel shirt was damp, his hair disheveled. He spotted Evelyn immediately. She was standing at a corner booth, coat in hand, clearly about to leave. His daughters were at her table, looking up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. Liam's stomach dropped. The girls weren't supposed to be here. They were supposed to be at the neighbor's house watching a movie. What had they done? "I'm so sorry," Liam gasped, hurrying over. "My truck broke down on Route 9. I tried to call, but my phone died. I'm really, really sorry." Evelyn stared at him, her green eyes wide with confusion. This was her date? This frazzled man with grease on his hands and 2 little girls at his side? "These are your daughters?" she asked slowly, her voice careful. "Yeah." Liam ran a hand through his damp hair, trying to catch his breath. "Emma and Ellie. I know this is weird. I should have mentioned them before, but honestly, I didn't think I'd actually make it here tonight, and I definitely didn't expect them to show up." He turned to the girls, his voice firm but gentle. "How did you 2 get here?" Emma looked down at her boots. "We told Mrs. Patterson we were going to get hot chocolate. She said okay. And then we walked here," Ellie added quietly, "because we wanted to make sure you didn't mess it up." Liam closed his eyes, torn between frustration and love. "Girls, you can't just leave without telling an adult where you're really going. But you always mess things up, Daddy," Emma said, her voice trembling. "You forget to smile. You forget to laugh. We just wanted to help." Evelyn felt something inside her shift. She'd been ready to leave, ready to write this off as another disaster. But looking at these 2 little girls, so earnest and worried, and at this man who was clearly doing his best, she couldn't walk away. She sat back down slowly. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's start over." Liam exhaled in relief and sat across from her. He tried to signal the barista, then attempted to order coffee but got the sizes wrong, asking for a medium large and then stammering when the young barista looked confused. "Just a black coffee," he finally managed. "Large. Please." Emma and Ellie giggled, the tension breaking slightly. Evelyn found herself smiling, despite everything. There was something disarmingly honest about this man. No pretense. No smooth talk. Just raw, exhausted sincerity. "So," Liam said, finally settling with a mug of steaming coffee. "I'm Liam Walker. I'm apparently a terrible first date. But according to my daughters, I make a mean grilled cheese sandwich. Evelyn Hart, she replied. I design logos and branding for small businesses. And I'm not great at this either. This is my first date in 3 years. Same, Liam admitted. First date since my wife passed. The words hung in the air, heavy and honest. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry, she said softly. Thank you. Liam took a sip of coffee. It's been 3 years. People keep telling me it gets easier, but I'm still waiting for that part. Evelyn nodded. She understood that kind of pain, even if it came from a different place. My fiancé left me 2 weeks before our wedding, also 3 years ago. I guess we both got stuck. Liam met her eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition. A kinship. Well, he said with a small smile. At least we're stuck together for the next 20 minutes. The girls chattered happily after that, telling Evelyn about their school, their favorite cartoons, and how their dad once tried to braid their hair into a unicorn horn, and it looked like a lopsided tree. Liam blushed, sheepish and endearing. Evelyn asked them questions, genuinely interested, and found herself laughing at their stories. For the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her chest. Not fireworks. Not passion. Just a quiet warmth. Like the first thaw after a long winter. The conversation flowed more easily than Evelyn had expected. Liam talked about his work at the aviation shop, how he was rebuilding a vintage Cessna in his spare time. He described the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it fly again. His eyes lit up when he talked about the mechanics of flight, the way wings generated lift, the delicate balance between thrust and drag. Emma and Ellie interrupted constantly, adding details he left out, correcting him when he got dates wrong, asking Evelyn questions about her cat and her apartment. It was chaotic and sweet, and Evelyn found herself completely absorbed. She told them about Winston, her tabby cat who knocked over her coffee every morning like clockwork. She described her latest project, designing a logo for a local bakery, and how she'd spent 3 days perfecting the curve of a croissant. The girls were fascinated, asking if she could draw them something. Evelyn pulled out a pen and sketched 2 little stick figures on a napkin, giving them crowns and wings. Emma and Ellie clutched the napkin like treasure. But then the cafe door opened again, and Rachel walked in. She spotted Evelyn immediately and marched over, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. She wore a long wool coat and high-heeled boots, looking polished and out of place in the cozy cafe. Evelyn, are you okay? Rachel asked, glancing at Liam and the girls with thinly veiled judgment. I texted you 3 times. You didn't respond. I'm fine, Evelyn said quickly, feeling her cheeks flush. Rachel, this is Liam. And Emma and Ellie. Rachel's eyes widened as she took in the scene. A man in a flannel shirt with grease under his fingernails. 2 little girls drinking hot chocolate with whipped cream on their noses. This was not what she'd envisioned. Wait, Rachel said slowly, her voice rising slightly. This is your date? The guy who brought his kids? Her tone was loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. Evelyn felt her stomach twist with embarrassment. Liam's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Emma looked down at her hands, and Ellie's smile faded completely. Rachel, Evelyn said quietly, her voice strained. It's fine. Really? Fine? Rachel laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. It was sharp and incredulous. Evelyn, I set this up so you could move on and meet someone, not babysit someone else's family. This is supposed to be about you. The words hit like a slap. Evelyn felt shame and anger twist together in her chest. She wanted to defend Liam, to tell Rachel she was being cruel and unfair. But the words stuck in her throat. Years of avoiding conflict, of keeping her head down, of not making waves, held her silent. Liam stood slowly, his face carefully neutral. He reached for his wallet and placed cash on the table, enough to cover their drinks and a generous tip. I appreciate you taking the time to meet me, Evelyn, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the tension. But I think it's best if we call it a night. He reached for his coat and gestured to the girls. Come on, Emma. Ellie. Let's go home. Emma looked up at Evelyn, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Did we do something wrong? She whispered. No, sweetheart, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. You didn't do anything wrong. I promise. But the damage was done. Liam ushered his daughters toward the door, his hand gentle on their backs. Ellie glanced back once, her small face crumpling with confusion and hurt. Then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft chime. The cafe seemed colder without them. Rachel sat down across from Evelyn, oblivious to the devastation she'd caused. Honestly, Evelyn, you dodged a bullet there. A single dad with all that baggage? That's not what you need right now. You need someone who can focus on you, not someone juggling 2 kids and a dead wife. Evelyn didn't respond. She stared at the door where Liam and the girls had disappeared, feeling something sharp and painful lodge itself in her chest. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening over and over in her mind. She kept seeing the look on Emma's face when Rachel had spoken, the way the little girl's smile had vanished like someone had turned off a light. She kept seeing Liam's quiet dignity as he'd gathered his daughters and left without defending himself or lashing out. She'd spent 3 years hiding behind walls, convincing herself that isolation was safety. But tonight, those walls felt like a prison. Around midnight, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. This is Liam. I got your number from Linda, the mutual friend who set this up. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how tonight went. I shouldn't have brought the girls, even accidentally. That was unfair to you. I hope you have a good holiday. Take care. Evelyn read the message 3 times, guilt twisting in her stomach like a knife. She started typing a response, then deleted it. What could she say? That she was sorry? That Rachel was wrong? That she wished she'd been braver, stronger, better? She set the phone down and stared at the dark window. Snow was falling outside, soft and silent, blanketing the world in white. She thought about Liam's life, raising 2 little girls alone after losing his wife, showing up to a blind date even when his truck broke down and everything went wrong, trying to smile for his daughters even when his heart was still broken. And she thought about herself. About Marcus and the text message that had shattered her, about the 3 years she'd spent alone, convinced that protecting herself was the same as living. She realized, lying there in the dark, that she'd been wrong. Walls didn't just keep hurt out, they kept everything out, including the possibility of something real, something beautiful, something worth the risk. The next morning, Evelyn found something strange. When she picked up the coat she'd worn to the cafe, a small envelope fell out of the pocket. It was wrinkled and slightly stained with hot chocolate. The front was addressed in careful, childish handwriting, to Mommy in heaven. Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a drawing on construction paper, rendered in crayon. 3 stick figures stood under a Christmas tree, decorated with lopsided ornaments. 1 tall figure in the middle, 2 smaller ones on either side. Above them, a star. At the bottom, in that same careful handwriting, were the words, Merry Christmas. Mommy. Daddy's smiling again. We love you. Evelyn sank onto her couch, the drawing in her lap, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. One of the girls must have slipped it into her coat pocket by mistake during the chaos of leaving. She stared at the drawing, at the hope and love contained in those simple crayon lines. Liam hadn't been on that date for himself. He'd been there because his daughters wanted him to be happy, because they were worried about him, because even at 6 years old, they understood that their father was drowning in grief and wouldn't save himself. Evelyn drove to Henderson Aviation Repair the next afternoon. She'd looked up the address online, and it had taken her 20 minutes to work up the courage to actually go inside. The shop was a large metal building on the edge of town, surrounded by parked planes and rusted equipment covered in snow. A faded sign above the door read Henderson Aviation, If it flies, we fix it. Inside, the air smelled like oil and metal and something sharp she couldn't identify. The space was cavernous, filled with plane parts, tool benches, and half-assembled engines. Christmas lights had been strung haphazardly along the walls, a cheerful contrast to the industrial surroundings. She found Liam in the back corner, working on an engine mounted on a stand. He wore coveralls and safety glasses, grease smeared across his forearms. He was focused, methodical, tightening bolts with practiced precision. He looked up when she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Evelyn?" "I found this," she said, holding up the envelope. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "One of your daughters left it in my coat pocket." Liam wiped his hands on a rag and took the drawing. His expression softened immediately, then crumpled with a pain so raw it made Evelyn's heart ache. "They write letters to Sarah," he said quietly, his voice thick. "Their mom. They leave them under the Christmas tree every year, addressed to heaven. I didn't know they brought one with them last night." "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. "For Rachel. For not standing up for you. For letting you walk away like that." Liam shook his head slowly. "You didn't do anything wrong, Evelyn. You didn't sign up for this. No one does. Most people run the moment they find out. I have kids. Your friend was just honest about what you were probably thinking anyway." "That's not true," Evelyn said, her voice stronger now. "I wasn't thinking that at all. I was thinking that you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. That your daughters are lucky to have you. That I wanted to keep talking to you and hearing their stories and maybe see you again." Liam looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes searching hers for any sign of pity or obligation. "Why are you here, Evelyn?" "Really, because," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I've spent 3 years hiding from everything that could hurt me. I've built this perfect little bubble where nothing can touch me, and I thought that was safety. But last night, watching you leave with Emma and Ellie, I realized I'm not living. I'm just surviving, and I don't want to do that anymore." Liam set the drawing down carefully on the workbench, next to a socket wrench and a parts manual. "I need to be honest with you," he said quietly. "I'm not looking for someone to fix me. I'm not looking for someone to be a replacement mom for my kids. And I'm definitely not looking for a relationship right now, because I don't think I have the emotional capacity for one. I'm just trying to get through each day without falling apart. That's all I've got." "I know," Evelyn said. "And I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to be their mom or fix you or push for some fairy tale. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see what you're doing. I see how hard you're trying. And I think you're doing an incredible job." For the first time since she'd walked in, Liam smiled. It was small and sad and weary, but it was real. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." Evelyn nodded and turned to leave, feeling lighter somehow despite the ache in her chest. But as she reached the door, Liam called after her. "Evelyn?" She looked back. "If you're free sometime this week," he said slowly, carefully, like he was testing the words, "maybe you could come over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just grilled cheese and soup. But the girls would love to see you again. And honestly, so would I." Evelyn felt her heart lift. Felt warmth spread through her chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I'd like that very much." The following week, Evelyn found herself standing on the porch of a small blue house on Maple Street, holding a bag of art supplies she'd picked up at the craft store downtown. She debated whether bringing a gift was appropriate, whether it would seem like she was trying too hard, but ultimately decided that if the girls liked drawing, they should have good supplies. Liam opened the door before she could knock, flour dusting his dark blue shirt and a smudge of tomato sauce on his cheek. "You're just in time," he said with a grin that transformed his whole face. "I'm attempting homemade pizza." Emphasis on attempting. The dough is fighting back. Inside, the house was warm and lived in a way that made Evelyn's sterile apartment feel hollow by comparison. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator, held up by mismatched magnets. Toys were scattered across the living room floor, an obstacle course of dolls and building blocks. A slightly lopsided Christmas tree stood in the corner near the window, decorated with handmade ornaments and strings of popcorn that looked like they'd been made by small, enthusiastic hands. Family photos lined the mantel above a brick fireplace. Evelyn spotted one of Liam in his Air Force uniform, looking younger and less burdened. Another showed him with a beautiful woman with dark hair and a warm smile, both of them holding two tiny babies. Sarah, Emma, and Ellie came running the moment they saw Evelyn, their footsteps thundering down the hallway. "You came back," Emma shouted, throwing her arms around Evelyn's waist with the full force of a 6-year-old's enthusiasm. Ellie was right behind her, slightly more reserved but smiling widely. "Daddy said you might not come, but I knew you would." "Can you help us make ornaments?" Emma asked, already tugging Evelyn toward the kitchen table. "Daddy's really bad at cutting shapes. He always makes them crooked." "I heard that," Liam called from the kitchen, but he was smiling. They spent the evening at the kitchen table, which had been covered with newspaper to protect the wood. Evelyn showed the girls how to cut paper snowflakes, how to fold the paper just right, so the patterns would be symmetrical. They painted pine cones with white and silver paint, making them look like they were covered in frost. Emma made a chain of construction paper rings, while Ellie focused intently on drawing a family of reindeer. Liam moved around the kitchen, rolling out pizza dough and spreading sauce with surprising competence. He was relaxed here, in his element, and Evelyn found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way he ruffled Ellie's hair as he passed, leaving a tiny flower mark she didn't seem to notice. The way he patiently untangled Emma's yarn when she got frustrated trying to make a pom-pom. The way he hummed softly while he worked, an old Christmas carol she recognized from her childhood. They ate dinner at the small kitchen table, the pizza slightly burnt on the edges but delicious nonetheless. Emma told elaborate stories about her day at school, complete with dramatic reenactments. Ellie was quieter, more observant, but her eyes sparkled when Evelyn asked her questions about her favorite books. After dinner, the girls insisted Evelyn read them a bedtime story. She sat between their twin beds in a small room, painted soft yellow, surrounded by stuffed animals and nightlights shaped like stars. She read about a brave little mouse who learned to fly with the help of a friendly bird. When she finished, Emma looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Miss Evelyn?" "Yes, sweetie?" "Do you have kids?" Emma asked. "No," Evelyn said softly. "I don't. Do you want them?" The question caught Evelyn off guard. She'd never really thought about it before, had always assumed that chapter of her life was closed when Marcus left. But sitting here in this small room with these two beautiful, thoughtful girls, she felt something shift inside her. "Maybe someday," she said carefully. "That's good," Ellie murmured, already half asleep, her words slightly slurred. "Because we think you'd be a really good mom." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. She kissed both girls on their foreheads, breathing in the clean scent of their shampoo, and quietly left the room. Downstairs, Liam was washing dishes at the kitchen sink, his back to her. She picked up a dish towel and started drying without asking, falling into a comfortable rhythm beside him. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds, the running water and the clink of plates. "Thank you," Liam said eventually, his voice quiet, "for coming tonight, for being so kind to them. They've been talking about you all week." "They're easy to love," Evelyn replied honestly. Liam paused, his hands still in the soapy water. He stared out the window above the sink at the dark backyard covered in snow. "I need to be honest with you about something," he said. "Okay, I'm not ready for a relationship. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Sarah was everything to me. My best friend, my partner, the love of my life. And losing her broke something inside me that I don't know how to fix. Some days I can barely function. Some days I forget to eat because I'm so focused on making sure the girls are okay. I'm a mess, Evelyn. A complete mess." Evelyn set down the plate she was drying and turned to face him. "I understand," she said gently. "But," Liam continued, finally looking at her, "I like having you here. The girls like having you here. And maybe that's enough for now. Just this. Friendship. No pressure. No expectations. No timeline." Evelyn felt relief wash over her like cool water. She wasn't ready either, she realized. Not for promises or commitments or anything that felt too big. But this? quiet evenings and shared meals and the sound of children laughing. This she could do. "I think that sounds perfect," she said. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn became a regular presence at the house on Maple Street. She came over 3 or 4 times a week, always bringing something small, art supplies, or books or ingredients for baking. She helped the girls with their homework, reading comprehension, and basic math. She taught them to make paper chains to hang around the house. She joined them for movie nights, sitting on the worn couch with Emma on one side and Ellie on the other, watching animated films she'd never seen before. Liam kept a respectful distance at first, always polite, always grateful, but careful not to presume anything. But there were moments when their hands would brush while reaching for the same dish, moments when their eyes would meet across the kitchen and something unspoken would pass between them, something fragile and tentative, but growing stronger each day. One evening, Evelyn stayed late to help wrap Christmas presents after the girls had gone to bed. She and Liam sat on the living room floor, surrounded by rolls of wrapping paper, tape, and gifts they'd hidden in the hall closet. "They asked Santa for art supplies," Liam said, carefully cutting paper around a box of markers, and books, and a microscope because Emma wants to be a scientist. "Ellie wants to be a writer," Evelyn added. "She told me yesterday. She's been working on a story about a dragon who's afraid of heights." Liam smiled, that warm, genuine smile that made him look younger. "She gets that from Sarah. Sarah loved to write. She kept journals, wrote poetry, dreamed about publishing a novel someday." It was the first time he talked about Sarah so openly. Evelyn listened, not interrupting, letting him share at his own pace. "She would have liked you," Liam said quietly. "Sarah. She always said I was too serious, too closed off. She would have appreciated someone who could make the girls laugh the way you do." "I wish I could have met her," Evelyn said honestly. "Me too." They finished wrapping in comfortable silence, and when Evelyn stood to leave, Liam walked her to the door like he always did. But this time, as she pulled on her coat, he caught her hand. "Evelyn," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I just want you to know that this, whatever this is, it matters to me. You matter to me." Evelyn squeezed his hand, her heart full. "You matter to me too." It was mid-December when everything changed. Liam received a call from his former employer, North Star Aerospace, a major company headquartered in Virginia Beach. They were developing a new line of cargo planes designed for rapid deployment in disaster zones, and they needed experienced test pilots for the prototype phase. The program director remembered Liam from his Air Force days and wanted him on the team. The pay was triple what he made at the repair shop. Full benefits, housing assistance, a chance to fly again. Really fly. Not just fix engines in a drafty hangar. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But it would mean moving to Virginia, leaving Pennsylvania, uprooting Emma and Ellie from their school, their friends, their routines, and leaving Evelyn. He told her about it one evening after the girls had gone to bed. They were sitting on the front porch, wrapped in heavy blankets against the cold, watching snow fall in the glow of the streetlights. "I don't know what to do," Liam admitted, his voice heavy. "This was my dream once. Flying, testing new aircraft, pushing limits. But that was before everything changed," Evelyn said quietly. Liam nodded. "I keep thinking about what they need. Stability. A home where they feel safe. But I also think about the future. What if I stay here out of fear and regret it? What kind of example is that?" "What do Emma and Ellie think?" she asked. "They don't really understand. They just know it means leaving. Leaving their school. Leaving Mrs. Patterson next door. Leaving you." The last words hung in the cold air. "When do you have to decide?" Evelyn asked. "End of next week. They need an answer by Christmas Eve." They sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down. Finally, Liam stood. "I should get some sleep." Before she could leave, Liam caught her hand. "If I go, will you wait for me?" Evelyn looked up at him, her heart breaking. "I can't ask you to stay, and you can't ask me to wait. It's not fair to either of us," Liam nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm sorry." He let go of her hand, and Evelyn walked to her car, tears streaming down her face. When she got home, she found a small envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. Inside was a ticket to an air show at the regional airport. The date was December 24th. At the bottom, in Liam's handwriting, "Come see me fly." Christmas Eve arrived cold and bright. Evelyn woke early, her stomach churning with nerves. She hadn't heard from Liam in 3 days. She didn't know if he'd accepted the job, if he was leaving, if she'd ever see him again. But she had the ticket, and she had a choice. She chose to go. The airport was small, just a single runway surrounded by snowy fields. A crowd had gathered. Families bundled in coats and scarves. Evelyn spotted Emma and Ellie near the front, holding a handmade sign covered in glitter. "Go, Daddy, go." She made her way over and knelt beside them. "Hi, girls," they squealed and threw their arms around her. "You came," Emma shouted. "We knew you would." "Is your dad flying today?" Evelyn asked. Emma nodded proudly. "He's doing the big finale, a loop-de-loop in a red biplane." The announcement came over the loudspeaker. "For our finale, a special performance by Captain Liam Walker, United States Air Force retired." The crowd applauded. A small red biplane taxied onto the runway, engine roaring. It lifted into the air, graceful and powerful. A barrel roll. A hammerhead turn. Then the loop. The plane arcing perfectly against the blue sky. Evelyn watched with tears streaming down her face. This was Liam alive, doing what he was born to do. The plane landed smooth and controlled. Liam climbed out, pulled off his helmet, his face flushed with joy. Emma and Ellie broke free and ran to him. He caught them both, holding them tight. Then he looked up and saw Evelyn. He set the girls down and walked toward her. "I turned down the job," he said. Evelyn's eyes widened. "What? Why?" "Because I realized I don't need to fly across the country. I can fly right here, teach at the flight school, do air shows, and still be home every night. But the money, the opportunity, doesn't matter. What matters is my girls. This town, you." Emma and Ellie grabbed Evelyn's hands. "Please say yes," Emma begged. "We already made you a stocking." Evelyn looked at them, this family that had become hers. "Yes. I'll stay. I'll always stay." Liam pulled her close and kissed her, while the crowd erupted in applause. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn." "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. 1 year later, Evelyn stood in the dressing room at Miller's Coffee House. The cafe had closed for a private event today. Her event, she wore a simple white dress, hair loose with flowers Emma and Ellie had added that morning. Rachel stood beside her, adjusting the veil. "I'm sorry," Rachel said quietly, "for what I said that night, for judging him, for almost costing you this." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "I forgive you. I forgave you months ago. You look beautiful," Rachel said. "Happy." "I am happy," Evelyn replied. Outside, Emma and Ellie stood at the front in matching green velvet dresses, holding baskets of rose petals, and at the altar near the window, Liam waited in a simple black suit, eyes fixed on the door. When the music started, Evelyn stepped out. The small crowd stood, but Evelyn only saw Liam. The way his face broke into a smile so wide it made her heart ache. She walked slowly toward him. When she reached him, he took her hands. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi," she whispered back. The ceremony was short. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Promises of presence, not perfection. Daily kindness, not grand gestures. Courage over fear. When pronounced married, Liam kissed her like she was home. Emma and Ellie cheered, throwing petals everywhere. The cafe erupted in applause. Afterward, they gathered at the table where Evelyn had sat alone a year ago. Liam pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring he'd made from aluminum from the first plane they'd restored together. "It's not fancy," he said, sliding it onto her finger, "but it's ours." made from something broken that we fixed together. Evelyn looked at the ring, then at her husband, her family. It's perfect. Emma and Ellie hung a homemade ornament on the cafe's Christmas tree, a photo of the four of them, surrounded by glitter and the words, "Our family." Outside, snow began to fall. Christmas lights reflected in the window. Parents with strollers walked past. Children pressed their faces against the glass. Liam leaned close. "How's your heart, Mrs. Walker?" Evelyn smiled through happy tears. "My heart's not empty anymore." And it wasn't. For the first time in years, it was full. Full of love and laughter and hope. Full of second chances found in the last place she'd expected, when two little girls walked in and said their daddy was sorry he was late.